Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and I am the owner of the Big Discussions channel, and I am its founder. I am also the founder of the Big Words blog site. The information for my blog and for all of my social media contact info can be found on the banner for this channel. Today is August 6th, 2019. So, I got a little bit sidetracked the last couple of videos with the happenings and what was going on at that particular time, but I want to get back to our regularly scheduled programming. So we're going to talk a little bit of science here, and I'm going to continue with that. So I did a couple of videos on the basic sciences and basic research, and then one of my biggest supporters, Miss Burdine, asked me to elaborate on chemistry, so I made an introductory video on chemistry. But I wanted to, and I plan to talk about what the applied sciences are and what pharmacology, toxicology, inhalation toxicology, and finally ADME/drug metabolism. I want to talk about what all those are since I have backgrounds in those. But I thought that a good way to go would be to kind of go high level and give a discussion or have a discussion about why science degrees are important and why science degrees are a big deal and what makes them so valuable. Again, the motivation here, starting this channel, starting the blog, despite all the other things I talk about, is to increase minority participation in the STEMs. So less than 10% of STEM degree holders are Black/African American, and I want to do what I can to get this information out there and maybe inspire the next me or the next whomever who has the ability to do these things but doesn't have anyone like this in their family. So that's why we're here. So this topic, I actually wrote about this topic on my blog, and I'm going to leave the blog post in the description box below. And it's a blog post that I actually published on the Examiner and then republished on the Big Words blog site. And I believe the title is called "The Transferrable Skills You Receive from a Doctoral Degree in the Sciences." And so I can't speak for what you get from a doctoral degree in the humanities or in the language arts or history or African American studies, or I can't speak about what you get from those trainings, but I can talk about what you get exactly from when you get trained in the hard sciences. And those are the quantitative sciences, pharmacology, toxicology, chemistry, physics. Those are considered the hard sciences. But let's go back. So the idea for this whole story, it in part came from my father. So we have another dad story here. And there were numerous, as described, I lived with my father before I moved here to Washington, D.C. and started my career as a regulatory scientist. But there were several back and forths with my father about my degree, and I'm going to make a whole video on that, probably following this one. But I had to think about what my PhD actually represented. because as you'll see, as I'll describe, and I might have described it in some videos already. When people think PhD, a lot of people just think doctor. He's a doctor. She's a doctor. Doctor, 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 and that's it. But few people really understand what that PhD means and what it represents. So we're going to talk about that. So recently, a month or probably 2 months ago, I had lunch with a former Chinese coworker from my postdoctoral lab. And we were talking about where our colleagues are now and the training that we got. And one thing this colleague said was that science training is some of the best training you can get because you learn so much. And even if you don't stay in the sciences, you can take those skills and do so many other things with them. And I've experienced this personally. So again, whether or not you stay in your scientific field, once you get very in-depth and meaningful and robust scientific training, you learn a lot of things, and those skills can and will transfer into other areas and other applications. So a couple of years ago, when I started my federal career, after I started my federal career, the University of Michigan Department of Pharmacology hosted a symposium for the current students so that they could talk to alumni who were out in the workforce doing different things. And so we each had to put together PowerPoint presentations and present to the students and say, this is what I did when I was working on my thesis, and this is what I'm doing now, and this is what the training for my thesis, this is how it helped me, and this is what I had to learn once I left the University of Michigan Department of Pharmacology. So I think that morning I went first. And so I talked about what I do now, and I'm going to talk about that here on YouTube. But I decided, you know what, I'm going to list out and bullet out what skills I got from my doctoral training, and I'm going to list those out and highlight those for the students. So afterwards, I wrote up something about it, which is the blog post I just talked to you about, and that's in the description box below. But let's walk through the transferable skills you get from a degree in the sciences, whether it's if you get a PhD in pharmacology or cell biology or genetics or physiology or toxicology, you're going to get these skills. And probably if you do a master's, you'll probably get some of these or most of these as well. But let's walk through them. So the first one is critical thinking and problem solving skills. So that's, as the name applies, you have a problem or an issue, and you have to think logically about it and work your way through it and come up with solutions. So there are applications for that in a research lab, and there are applications for that outside of a research lab. When I wanted to start my blog, I didn't know the first thing about starting a blog, so I had to read up on it, and I had to figure out what the platform was. I had to figure out what WordPress was, what all the plugins were, what all the widgets were, and when I set up this YouTube channel, I didn't know how to do that, so I had to study that, figure out what file formats YouTube would take. I had to figure out how to edit film and do all kinds of things. You learn the ability to multitask. This is a huge one. And you learn how to organize and coordinate multiple projects so that you can have them going at one time. So my graduate advisor, who was a very brilliant man, he really hammered this into us. You got to have multiple things going at once. So he taught us how to have multiple projects going, and also activities that we needed to keep the lab going all at once. So productivity was maximized. And so right now, I have my 9 to 5, And then I have my 5 to 9, which is writing, and now I have the YouTube channel going. And so from my science training, I know how to have all these things, A, B, C, D. I know how to have them all going in parallel. You learn the ability to write clearly. Now, my graduate advisor would say that at that time I didn't know how to write. But even though I didn't have it down perfectly at that time, I learned that it was important. And so at my current 9 to 5 for my regulatory science career, writing is in everything we do, so I do it there. And as you know, I have a blog, so I write there as well, and I'm working on a book project as well. So writing, that skill has transferred out in numerous areas. The ability to speak and present clearly. So that's self-explanatory. In my current career, there are meetings where we're often talking amongst each other. Sometimes we're talking with private sector companies. Sometimes we're talking with overseas global partners. And sometimes we're giving trainings to each other. We're talking about assignments. We're giving feedback. So it's very important to be able to communicate clearly. And I use that skill right here on YouTube. Hopefully I communicate clearly enough for you all. The ability to work on teams. So that's very important in my current career. Everything is team oriented and team related, and we have deadlines, and so everyone has to do their part. And if one person doesn't do their part, it hurts the entire team. So you have to be able to coordinate with other people, earn the trust of other people, and negotiate with other people and work with other people. And for running a blog, you have to do that too. Sometimes you're co-writing things with other people. Sometimes you're accepting and publishing work from other people. And sometimes you're doing interviews with people. And so you have to learn how to coordinate and work with others. And that's the same is true for here on YouTube, because I've done interviews right here on my channel with other people. So teamwork is essential, and it's in everything. And finally, you have to have the ability to adapt and understand new systems. And that's something you will get from training in the sciences as well. So during my doctoral research, there were numerous tools in the lab that we used to do our experiments, and they often required learning, understanding the instrument, how the instrument worked, how the instrument interacted with the computer. You know, in some instances, you had to load drivers onto the computer so the computer knew how to run the instrument. You had to be able to troubleshoot the instrument when it wasn't working, and you had to be able to pick things up on the fly. So in my current career, we don't do that as much because it's in an office and we're using computers all the time, and we have an IT department. But for setting up my blog, I had to learn how to do that. Again, I had to learn how to set up WordPress. I had to learn how to use the plugins, the widgets, all the little bells and whistles on the site. And the same thing is true for YouTube. You know, you have to learn how to use your channel. You have to learn how to use your camera. You have to learn how to use different programs like Microsoft PowerPoint and Photoshop. And sometimes you run into problems, and you have to figure out what the workarounds are so you can get to your objective, and vice versa. So those are the transferable skills. And you know, whether or not you stay in a science, a lot of those skills can transfer into other arenas, and oftentimes they can make you money in other arenas. So that's what you should get from a PhD in one of the sciences or in just science training in general. And whichever career you're in, I would encourage you to think about what the transferable skills are. One of the content creators I watch pretty regularly, Kevin Samuels, the image guy, he mentioned transferable skills the other night on one of his uploads. So that's a pretty big deal. You always want to be thinking about, what am I learning? How can I apply this in other areas and other arenas? And you'd be surprised what you know and what you can use that you learned over here and use it over here to make money or to achieve your objective, whatever that is. So with that, I'm going to conclude this video, and I think the next one I'll probably tell you some more stories about my PhD and my father and a lot of the back and forth he and I had over that. So in the description box, I'm going to leave that blog post about the transferable skills, but I think I'm also going to add my the story of how I earned my STEM degree, in case any of you are curious about that, and I'm probably going to make a video about that in itself. So with that, thank you for watching. Please like the video, please share it if you think it could benefit someone else, and please subscribe to the channel. And with that, I'll see you next time. Always remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. So I'm back for another outro here. And usually when I do these outros, I've either forgotten to say something in the main video, or I've thought of something that I thought would add to the main video. But before I get into that, I want to say that one of the pictures you saw in the beginning of this video was me during my research days as a student. So I was working on my dissertation at that time at the University of Michigan. So I was a much younger man and a much more innocent man, and I was there in the lab every day acquiring those skills. So what I wanted to add was there was something I thought that would go well with that set of skills that I described in the video, and if I were to update and revise that blog post, I would add this in there, and that is data analysis. And data analysis, in addition to the data generation, is something that my graduate advisor had to hammer into me over and over and over again until I understood it and until I got it right. And so basically, data analysis is the ability to look at a set of results or a set of data and to properly make a determination about whether or not the person presenting the data has answered the question they've sought to answer, or if their results match what they claim they are. So that involves being able to understand and read bar charts and line graphs, and in some instances, but rare instances, pie charts. But understanding standard deviations and error bars and statistical analyses, and knowing what p-values are, knowing what least squares are, those kinds of things. That's data analysis, and that comes along with data generation. And if you have worked on a research project before, you're doing the data generation, but the key is to generate quality data, and then you have to properly interpret that data and present it and write it up in a paper, and then you have to make those determinations when you're listening to someone give a talk or present their results. So that's an important transferable skill, and that translates into the business world. So I was thinking today that when I was a student at the University of Michigan, there were several scientists who came back who had ascended into management of their companies. One was a black gentleman named Dr. Cecil Pickett, and Dr. Cecil Pickett eventually became the president of a company called Shearing Plow. I'm not sure if that company is still Shearing Plow today, but he ascended to management. Another gentleman was Dr. Tom Bailey, who ascended to management at Merck. Another was Dr. Anthony Liu, who had connections to the University of Michigan. He ascended to, I believe, management at Merck as well. So in the pharmaceutical industry, the scientists are natural candidates for ascension in the company and eventually leading the company because they understand the science, number one, but also they have those transferable skills that allow them to step into the financial / business side of the company as well, and that allows them to eventually move into those leadership positions. I wanted to use one more real world example from the main video. In the main video, I talked about myself and the blog and the YouTube channel, but a real world example is Robert F. Smith. And Robert F. Smith is the gentleman who pledged to relieve the student loan debt of the 2019 graduating class of Morehouse College. And I will not claim to know everything about Robert F. Smith, but what I've learned is that his original career and training was in chemical engineering. So he transitioned over into the financial sector and started his company Vista Equity Partners. I believe that's the name of it. But he took some of those skills from his STEM career and his STEM training, and he combined those with the financial knowledge set that he gained, and he was able to start his company over in the financial sector. So that's another example of acquiring those transferable skills from the sciences and then applying them in another area. So with that, I'm done. Thank you for watching this video. Please like the video. Please share it, and also, once again, please subscribe to my channel. And with that, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.